Hi, Porter County. Welcome to Coffee and Canvas. I'm Amanda from the South Haven branch. And if you've ever been to any of our programs, you'll know that I'm the instructor for Coffee and Canvas. I teach this class at Portage, at Hebron, and at South Haven. If you were at Hebron's class, you actually got to do this painting because we did that at the beginning of March. But if you were signed up for one of South Haven's two classes, I'm sorry, it got canceled. So I decided this would be an easy thing for me to do an online painting class. So grab some coffee, grab a canvas or a poster board or a piece of paper, some paint and some brushes, and we'll paint this painting behind me of the flowers and the jar and the bumblebee. You can do the background in any color you want. You can do pink, I've done peach, and my original here was a sort of a lilac colored background. So this is the painting that we're gonna do, and I'll show you step by step how to do the jar and the flowers and the little bumblebee. So stay tuned. Okay, we're ready to get started on our painting. So this is what we're going to be making. Today we're going to paint our jar and the little bumblebee and the flowers. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually the jar. The paint colors that you're going to need for this painting. Here, you're going to need a little bit of everything, to be honest. Except for purple, unless you do your background purple. I'm doing my background. I already painted, I'm doing it on a piece of poster board. I already painted it purple. And so I have purple, but you might necessarily not need it unless you actually decide you want your background to be purple. For a background color, anything really would work unless you're doing something that's too close to the color of the jar, because the jar itself is kind of a turquoisey color, and if you do your background in turquoise, it's not really going to stand out. If you do it in the same color as the flowers, it also won't stand out very well. I found that pastels seem to work, really like a light sky blue, a light green, a really light pink, lavender, peach, anything like that, light yellow would all work well for this painting. So you can have brushes of any different size, really. You'll just need kind of one big one to do the background and some smaller ones for what we're going to do as far as the details of the flowers and the jars. So I've got a whole bunch of different brushes, but I'm not going to use them all. Some water and some paper towels just so that you can kind of clean up a little bit. We don't rinse out our brushes all that much. And again, you'll need the paint. So the first thing that we're going to do is the jar in our painting. And we need to mix a sort of a turquoise color. So I'm going to mix a little bit of turquoise here by using blue and green, since I find out what brush I want to use here. What brush do I want to use? About this brush. This is a nice small brush. Or maybe this one's a flat brush, this one's a round brush. Maybe I'll use the round brush just to be safe. So I need to mix a little bit of a turquoise, which means I need green. And I need a little bit of blue. And I'm going to mix them together. And I don't want it that dark. I want it lighter than that. So I'm actually going to grab a little bit of white and tone it down with some white in the mix. It's supposed to be kind of the color of those sort of bluish glass ball jars that you see out and about. I like that color. That's a good color. So let me move my paint palette out of the way. Now my jar, if you look at the original, it's a little bit, if you draw a line this way, it's about halfway across the canvas and a little more than halfway up the canvas. So the first thing that we're going to start to do is the neck of the jar, and it's sort of a curved shape, so I'm about a little more than halfway up. I'm going to put an arch on my paper right there. And I'm actually going off the side of my poster board. Well, not really off the side, but because I don't have a canvas, I'm doing this on a piece of poster board. That way I don't waste a canvas. And so if you're on your actual canvas, you will go right off the side. You can see that it just trails right off the edge of my canvas. But I can't do that on my paper because otherwise I'll be painting on my table that I have here, and I don't want to do that. So there's the back of the top lip of the jar. And then I need to paint a little line going down. And then I need, and the length of your line determines how wide of a neck your bottle has. And then I need to make the curve and down of the side of my jar. So I'm going to curve out and then down. And this is where I always have a problem doing straight lines. If you've ever taken my class before, you know I'm terrible at painting a straight line on anything. My lines always end up going kind of wonky and sideways. It is a skill that I have yet to really develop. I feel like I need some more blue in here. Mix in a little bit of blue on my jar. It's a little bit too green for my taste, I think. And we need another line up by the lip of the jar. Just mirroring the first line that we made. And then we're going to stop on our jar and not do anything else because I need to do the flowers next. And I'm actually going to put this brush in the water so that it doesn't dry out because I need to do the flowers here next. I needed this part of the jar that was behind the flowers because I'm going to paint the flower stems over top of it and then paint the front part of the jar across the flower stems. So I need that back part of the jar in place before I actually do the stems of the flower. So now I need some brown. I'm going to use one of my smallest brushes that I have so I can get some nice dainty looking flower stems. So I'm going to get some brown and probably actually a little bit of white. I don't want it to be like completely brown. The brown that this is a pretty dark brown here. So I'm going to mix in a bit of white with it to make more of a tan. And in this painting, I actually don't like mixing my colors completely together to make an actual color because I like it looking kind of streaky. And it just adds a little bit of depth to the painting. It makes it look a little bit more fun and interesting to look at. So there are basically 5 flowers in this painting. And with all these stems that kind of sort of crisscross each other. So I think I want, and you can put these anywhere you want, really. It doesn't matter exactly where the flowers go. But I'm going to kind of go from left to right as I put these flowers in here. So I think I'm going to have one start and really kind of overhang the edge. Very light touch. And you're going to have to keep getting more paint. And make that a bit of a line there. And sweep it right down into the bottom of my painting. So there's one stem. And I think I'm going to make it so that the one right next to it, which is going to be a little bit taller and stick up a little higher, I think I'm going to make it so that they connect to each other, so that they're sort of sharing a stem. I'm going to make it so that they're kind of shooting off of the same stem here. So there's 2. And I'm going to put another flower here. It's going to be a little bit shorter of a flower. And I'm going to curve it down. You can see I'm doing just sort of sections of the stem at a time. It helps me control it just a little bit better. I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to sweep it right across this other stem. Right like that. Trying to get a little bit of a taper at the end of each stem, just so that it makes kind of a nice finished look at the end there. So there's 3, and let's do a big one kind of right in here. We'll sweep that down. You run out of paint partway through, especially if you're using a small brush. So you got to constantly keep putting more paint on the brush, because then you run out kind of in the middle. There we go. There's 4 stems. Now you could do 3 stems, 4 stems. The more stems you do, the more flowers you're going to have to actually paint. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you're afraid you're not going to be able to paint the flowers, maybe only do 3. And let's see, I think I need one more. And I think I'm going to make it kind of, let's see. I think I want to make this one a little bit longer too. I don't don't like where that one's stopping. I think I'm going to make the last one kind of right in here. I'm going to make the stem cross that one in the jar. Make my stems look kind of interesting as they're in the jar there. So I've got my stems pretty much where I want them to be. I'm going to add some leaves on here. Now I'm going to rinse out that brush. I will probably need it later. I'm going to grab, let's see, a wider round brush. It's a little bit bigger of a round brush. Can you see that brush? I need to put some leaves on here. You can see that I've got, bump my table. You can see that I've got some leaves on here in different places. You can even place them down into the jar if you wanted to. The leaves are green and yellow. So what I'm actually going to do is take my brush and dip it partway in green and partway in yellow. And that way when I go to make a stroke, I get both colors showing up at the same time. The brush is kind of mixing them itself. I'm not actually mixing them together and making a kind of a greenish yellow. So let's see, I think I maybe want a couple leaves here. Just kind of right outside of the mouth of the jar. And you can see it's mostly mixing on my brush, but there's a little bit of color playing against each other. I think maybe I want some leaves, some bigger ones, kind of up here. The yellow really stands out on that one. I'm actually going to cover some of these up with the flowers later, but it adds kind of a little bit of a background depth to it. I think I'm going to put some inside of my jar as well. Maybe right here where the stems kind of meet. There's another leaf. Now you don't have to mix the green and the yellow on the brush like I'm doing. This is just sort of a fun little thing to do to kind of add a little extra depth to the leaves. You could just do straight up green. This one's mostly going to be green here. You can see that it looks different when you do it straight up green. Or you could even do a straight up yellow leaf, really, if you wanted to. Maybe I'll put a yellow leaf down in here. I'm not rinsing out the brush in between, so the colors are really kind of mixing very nicely and just adding some dimension to my painting. I think I like that. So now I need to go back and finish up my jar. I need to add the rest of the details on the jar there. So I've got my brush that was in the water, just kind of chilling out. So now I need to finish my jar here. So I got to go back to this sort of turquoise that I had before for my jar. Kind of get some of that turquoise there. And now I need to do the front curve of the jar, this part right here. So I'm going to do the same curve that I did back here, just upside down. And I'm going to do two of them, 1, 2, to make the mouth of the jar. So I'm going to paint directly over what I've just painted. And I'm going to paint right off the side there. Because painting over, having some underneath of the layer of the jar and some on top of the layers that are in the jar is what gives it that 3D appearance, and you can tell it's actually supposed to be a jar. So I need to do the bottom edge of the jar's mouth. Ooh, I can really hear the wind blowing outside. It is a windy day today. So there's the mouth of my jar. Now we need to add some more of these details. And if you look at it, it's not actually really all that detail-y. When you look at it, it's mostly just a lot of squiggly lines that are supposed to be like reflections on there. So I'm going to kind of just take my brush. It's mostly dry at this point. I've used a lot of the paint that's on my brush. And take some swipes here and there. Some might be in a slightly darker color than what I had. I'm going to go swish some lines down here, like that. And then I'm going to take a little bit of some of this color and I'm going to kind of swish it this way across the jar. Up and down and side to side. And then maybe some little kind of squiggles going down. This is where I'm going to start adding in a little more white to my color. You'll see some lighter colors suddenly showing up in here as I kind of crisscross my paint. Just kind of swish some lines on there. This is what's going to make it look like an actual jar. And I like the colors to be kind of mixed a little bit. I like when the blue and the green, you can kind of see them on top of each other. And I like a little extra white in places on the jar because that just tends to make it look more like a reflection. Oh, that looks good. Sort of a reflection on the front edge of the jar. Got a little white on my brush there. That looks good. I like the white. Get some up and down strokes in there. Get some kind of maybe back in here behind the flower stems. Just give it a little depth and dimension. Some more white. That was a little too blue. I think I need a little dab more white in there. That looks good. Now I can definitely tell it's supposed to be a jar. There's my jar. You'll notice most of my heavy marking is kind of in this area of the jar, and there's less down here. That's just something I noticed on the original painting. This particular painting I got, I'm going to put this brush in the water because I think I'm done with my jar. This particular painting I found a YouTube video on, and it was by someone who calls herself the Art Sherpa, which I thought was a cute name for an artist. And she does lots of painting. She likes lots of colors. A lot of her paintings are super bright and super colorful. And so I kind of riffed a little bit off of her painting to do this particular painting. We're going to do the bumblebee here next because we need to get the black part on so that it can dry. We need that black to be dry before we start to put the yellow layers of the bee on it. So I'm going to use my little bitty brush again, and I'm going to grab some black paint. And the bee is sort of two shapes. He's a circle for his head. So let's give him a little circle head. Or maybe a little bit oval, perhaps. Or bean shaped. I guess it's not quite an exact circle. And then a sort of oval shaped body. So let's get his body in there. And then fill it in. Gotta fill in Mr. Bumblebee. It's gonna be a fat little furry bumblebee, and I'll show you in a second how to make him look furry. There's a kind of a technique to do it to make him look like he's like a fuzzy little bumblebee. Not like a mean yellow jacket, but like a fuzzy, cute little bumblebee. So you want your brush to be mostly dry, and then you just want to kind of take some strokes, just starting out and going in along the edge of your bee. And hopefully you can see that on the video, that he's starting to look kind of fuzzy. This is where it actually helps if you have a brush that's kind of messed up and it doesn't taper to a really nice point anymore. That's actually helpful with this kind of painting because then all the little bristles that stick out make your bumblebee look kind of fat and fluffy. So let's get his head, make his head kind of fluffy. And then we're going to have to put some legs and some antennas. Ooh, that got away from me a little bit there. I made his head a little lumpy, but that's okay. I can kind of fill it in and tweak that out a little bit there. So I need some legs on my bee. And most people make the mistake of making like a curved line for the legs. We don't want a curved line. Our legs aren't curved. Their legs are like our legs where they're jointed. So he's going to have some back legs, kind of an L shape. Give him two little legs right here. And we'll give 2 little legs kind of sticking out the front there. And it's okay if it's a little sketchy looking. This is kind of an impressionistic looking painting. And little bee needs some antennas. And again, not curved, but straight up and across. You can see why I'm using a teeny tiny little brush at this point, because otherwise it's going to be so thick and not look quite right. So that looks good. There's my little bee. I'm going to stick my brush in the water, let it kind of rinse out. We need this to dry before we can put anything else on top of it, like the yellow paint, or it'll just turn brown. So we need to start working on the flowers up here at the top. So I'll shift my canvas down just a wee bit so we can get them all in there. Now, if you look at the original, it's just kind of all different colors sort of put together. I watched what the artist did in the original, and she tried to kind of switch from kind of a coral to yellow to orange to red. Sometimes it was light pink to dark pink. Sometimes it was pink with orange and yellow. Sometimes pink with red. She shifted the colors a lot, and we're not actually going to ever rinse out our brush either. So we want a nice big round brush, which was, let's see, which one? It was this blue one that I had here. So let me finish rinsing out my brush. I think this is the same brush that I used when I was doing the leaves. So that's the brush I'm going to use again. I got to get the green paint out of it though. Don't want my flowers to turn green. So I'm going to start on the left and work to the right because I'm right-handed and I don't want to accidentally lean my hand on the paint that I've already done. So I think I'll start with maybe pink and white. And actually what I want to do is, like I did with the leaves, double load the brush. So white on one side, pink on the other side of my brush. I don't know if you can see that very well in the picture or not, but I've got both colors on there. And I'm going to start at way out here at the end of the flower and work my way back. And it's a very simple stroke. I'm actually going to start out past the tip of the stem that I have, because you can kind of see the stem through the paint as you get going. And so we want it to kind of look like it kind of suddenly appears, I guess. And so we're going to do three strokes. We're going to do 1. It's kind of a teardrop shape. 2, 3. 3 little sort of teardrop shapes as the tip of my flower. And pretty much every time you do one of these little 3 flower sections, you have to get more paint on your brush. So now I'm going to go back in and underneath. I'm going to do 1, 2, and then 3. And there's my second section. After I do a few of them, like 2 or 3, I'm going to switch up my colors. Now I've got mostly just pink on my brush. Didn't get enough paint that time. So 1, 2, and then 3 in the middle there. I'm going to start making my pink slightly darker by mixing a little bit of red with my pink. I'm going to grab some pink and some red and kind of make it sort of it's just a slightly darker pink, really, because the pink I have is actually pretty light. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to start making my petals get slightly bigger as I go down. And I'm going to add a little bit more red each time that I do it. So 1, 2, 3. Even more red. 1, 2, 3. And I'm using the actual shape of the brush, because it's a round brush, to just sort of push out and pull back, push out and pull back, push out and pull back. Now I'm going to pretty much be using straight up, just solid red. Push out, pull back, push out, push out. And I think I might even add just a touch of orange to the red and get kind of a coral color here so for the last couple. So push out, pull back. I can go right over top of the leaves where I made them before and do my last little petal there. And then I've got 1 flower ready to go. You see my 1 flower? Now I think I'm not gonna rinse out my brush. I kind of have a coral color in the brush right now. So I think I'm gonna keep going with the coral. So I'm gonna mix some yellow and some orange and some pink and get kind of a coral shade. And on the next flower, I think I'm gonna go dark to light. So I'm gonna start up here on the end of the flower. Double check my camera view so I know that you guys can see what I'm doing. So I've got a lot of this coral paint on the end of my brush. So I'm going to start out with some small little flowers. I'm going to get a little bit of white in here to kind of augment. I do really like the two-tone sort of shades that you can get when you mix the colors. I like that they sort of, you can see that white in there. And I think I'm going to start transitioning this to maybe more of an actual orange or peach. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white and orange to make a sort of peachy color. You see that my color changed there? That looks pretty good. I like that color. Make some more peach here. And then I'll probably transition again and maybe get some yellow in here. It'll mix with the kind of peach on that's already on my brush and make a fun color. I like that. I like that color. I think I'll transition to a even lighter yellow. Get some white in here. Mix a little bit of white in with my yellow. I'm going to transition to an even lighter color here. There's still quite a bit of that corally colored paint on my brush. So if I push really hard, you get kind of these swipes of color in there. And I'm going to add even more white and get kind of a really lighter color here with my last few petals. I like that. I think I'm going to stop that flower right there. I got a lot of paint on my brush now, so I'm not going to rinse it, but I'm going to squeeze some of it out on a paper towel just to kind of get some of the excess color off of there. I think I want one that's got a lot of yellow in it, so I'm going to grab some yellow and start off with yellow petals on this one. I like changing up the colors as I go. I think I need a little more white. For whatever reason, this yellow paint that I have doesn't seem to show up well on anything, so I always end up having to mix it down with a little bit of white just to get it to kind of show up and thicken up. It's weird how that works. I'm not a paint expert, so I can't tell you exactly why the white seems to help that, but it does. But I'm going to a slightly stronger yellow as I do this. And then I'm going to transition directly into orange. There we go. And I'm going to, once I do a few in orange, I'm actually going to transition to red. I want some straight up red in here. Red, red, 3 petals. 1, 2, 3. That didn't turn out very well. Let's fix that. And if you mess anything up, you can always just paint over what you've messed up. It's not a big deal. And I'm going to end with kind of just a mix of all the colors, really. It's whatever's left on my brush if I squeeze out most of the paint. Swipe. And I need one little one there. Maybe I'll keep going down on that one. I think I kind of like the way this is looking here. Maybe I'll keep going down. I was going to stop it a little higher up, but I actually think I kind of like the way this is going here near the bottom. I think I'm going to transition back to red too. I like making the different colors different in the flowers. I think it really makes it look neat. There's that one. And now I think I'm going to go back to some pink. So I'm going to squeeze some of this red out of my brush. I think I'll go back and I'll do some pink for these ones over here on this side, because I like the pink. So So I think I will start, I'm going to do a lot like this one over here. I'm going to start it almost completely white at the top, I think. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and this one's going to be a bit smaller, I think. I'm going to start it off significantly smaller than the other ones. We'll do pink. And then I think we'll make a slightly darker pink with some red. You can make the pink darker just by adding some red to it. It turns it into almost a magenta color. There we go. Oh, I like that color. That's a good color. It's definitely a darker pink. Add a little more red to it so that I can get some even slightly darker pinks. I'm going to do a couple more swipes with the red, and then I'm actually going to transition, I think, back to white. I like the white and the pink. I like cherry blossoms a lot. I think that they're really pretty. So I grab some white here. And I'll start to transition to a lighter color as I finish going down into my jar there. And I think for my last flower, I think I do want some more yellow maybe. I really like corals and yellows. I don't know if I like them against the purple or not, but I think I'm going to go with some coral here. So I need for coral, I need orange and yellow and pink to get a nice coral shade. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get some white in there. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's a very orangey coral. I think I'm going to tone that down for the next few. Get a little more pink in there. 2, 3. Every once in a while I'll grab a little spot of some other color, like maybe yellow, just to kind of make it pop a little bit. There we go. So we've got our flowers for the most part done. There's a few more details that I would like to add to it. Let me rinse out my brush and then I will show you on the original what I mean by the details that I want to add. There's sort of like some little floaty petals kind of floating off into the distance. If you look at the original one, you can see there's some petals kind of coming off here. And there's also some little dots coming off the tops of the flowers, which give it a little bit of interesting detail. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white on a brush, and I'll just do some dotting. You see what I did there? Just do a little dotting, kind of on the end of the flower, as if there's just little tiny buds that are so small you can't quite see them. I can do it with white. I can do it with maybe some yellow here. Just whatever the colors of the flowers that you did. I can do it with some red. That could look really cool against the coral there. And it's okay if they're a little messy. That's what we want. We want it to kind of look a little messy. I think I'm going to get some pink over here. Do some pink on this one. And maybe a little extra white in here as well. Once you get kind of all the colors on the end of your brush, then they really start mixing well. And I need maybe some of the floaty petals out here, so I'll grab a color or two that I liked and just sort of do a teardrop shapes. That kind of just randomly look like they might be blowing off or falling off the plant. Any color that you want, whichever color that you really liked. I kind of like the coral, so I'm kind of sticking with that sort of corally, reddish, pinkish. Anything that you don't like, just put some extra paint over top of. Grab some white here. The hardest part is making it look like they're just randomly falling off the plant. People have a tendency to put things in patterns instead of making things look random. It's just a human nature. Put a couple down here below my bumblebee. See my little one that I put below my bumblebee. Now I need to do my bumblebee. So I need to rinse out this little tiny brush because I got to stick with small. Because that bee is small, man. He's kind of hard to see there. So I need yellow. And we got to put some yellow on his face. So we're going to just kind of, we want it to look kind of fuzzy. So we're just going to kind of use the tip of our brush and give him a little, almost a collar. He kind of has a little collar of yellow fluff right around his little bumblebee neck. And then we got to do his back end. It's going to be kind of a triangle shape that we're going to put on his back end. I'm going to do some back here, but I'm not going to go all the way. I need to leave a little bit of a gap. You'll see what I mean as I start to go down here in sort of a triangular shape. There, see what I mean? It kind of is sort of a triangle. You see that? That's his little bumblebee back there. And we need to give him some wings. He needs some little bumblebee wings. These are also a triangle shape. So we're going to kind of go... There, can you see the triangle that we got there? Give him a little triangle shaped wing. And paint it in. And he actually has, since he's actually got a 4-part little bumblebee wing. In fact, I think I want to taper this up a little bit right there. That looks a little better. I made it more of a, not a perfectly equal triangle. And he's got a second wing behind the first, so just kind of grab some more paint and kind of make it like there's like a second wing back there. And then he has the bottom part of his wing, which kind of cuts right there. And then there's the other back of the wing there. That looks good. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of white and do some white details on here. I'm going to kind of give like that illusion of like the fairy wing. Draw a line down the middle and just kind of give it some lines on the side. Put a little bit of lines in between there. I'm going to add a couple little highlights to the bumblebee too. Like I'll put some little white on his butt there. Maybe a little bit of white kind of in that spot right there. Just giving him some highlights, making him look like the light is shining on him. And we need to give him a little bumblebee eye. And it's going to be kind of a horseshoe shape right here. A little horseshoe or rainbow shape a little bit. Depends on how finely you can make the little line there. I'm going to put some more white on his wings. Make the wings kind of stand out. I might actually put a little bit of black on the wings too. Just to kind of some shadow. There, I like that. Looks good. So now I've got my painting with my jar of flowers and my little bumblebee. There's my finished painting. I really like that. Turned out better than some of my other ones, actually. And of course, the final thing that you should always do with your painting is sign your name or your initials. There we go. So there you go. There's your bumblebee and jar of flowers painting. So there's that painting. Here's my original. Not too shabby. So good job, everybody, and thanks for coming to Coffee and Canvas with us. Once the library opens back up, of course, we always offer Coffee and Canvas pretty much about every other month, mostly at South Haven and also at Portage and Hebron. So have a great day, guys. Bye.